Inside Sing Sing Prison, world's deadliest inmates and gang secrets exposed. The Last Mile. Before we begin, make sure you hit subscribe, drop a like, and leave a comment, because once you step inside these walls, there's no turning back. The Hudson River shimmered under a pale gray sky, its surface broken by jagged ice as winter gripped New York. On its eastern bank, the fortress-like silhouette of Sing Sing Prison loomed over the small town of Ossining. To outsiders, it looked like any other correctional facility, a cluster of high brick walls, steel gates, and watchtowers. But those who lived in its shadow, or those who once walked its haunted corridors, would tell you otherwise. Sing Sing wasn't just a prison. It was a machine built to crush men, a place where legends of violence and death clung to the air like smoke. The story begins not in the courtroom, nor in the cell blocks, but in a dimly lit hallway known as the Last Mile. This was where condemned men took their final walk to the electric chair. Between the 1890s and 1963, more than 600 executions took place here, including infamous killers, mob hitmen, and men whose guilt was debated long after the switch was pulled. Each step echoed with dread, each walk a grim ritual that seared itself into the prison's folklore. The smell of burning flesh, witnesses said, lingered long after the lights dimmed. But by the 1970s, the executions had ended. What remained was something perhaps even darker, a prison where the living often envied the dead. The New Arrival. January 1983. Snow fell thick across Ossining, muting the sound of the town outside the walls. Inside Sing Sing, tension was thick enough to cut with a shank. That winter, the prison received a new inmate, Anthony Tony Marino, a reputed soldier for the Genovese crime family. Marino wasn't just another mobster. He was accused of orchestrating multiple hits in the Bronx, including the high-profile disappearance of a small-time bookie whose body had never been found. Convicted on racketeering charges, Marino was sent to Sing Sing to serve a 25-year sentence. From the moment he arrived, eyes followed him. Sing Sing's population was a volatile mix. Street gang members from the Bronx and Brooklyn, upstate toughs locked in for armed robbery, lifers from Harlem and Queens, and mobsters like Marino who carried their reputations like armor. Gangs such as the Latin Kings, the Bloods, and the Neatus had carved out their corners of the cell block. But the Mafia still carried weight, even behind bars. Marino knew the rules of survival. Cash bought favors, cigarettes bought silence, and fear bought loyalty. Within weeks, he had smuggled money through family visits, greased a few guards, and set up a small protection racket. If you wanted safety in cell block C, you went through him. But Sing Sing was no ordinary yard. It wasn't just about territory, it was about secrets. And Marino had one that was about to explode. A body in the river. On a bitter February morning, Ossining police pulled a frozen body from the Hudson River just a mile downstream from Sing Sing. The corpse was wrapped in black plastic, hands bound, throat slit from ear to ear. The man was later identified as Joseph "Joey Knuckles" Fratelli, a known associate of Marino's crew on the outside. The discovery sent shockwaves through the prison. How did a mob-connected body turn up so close to Sing Sing? The whispers began. Had Marino ordered the hit from behind bars? Had Sing Sing guards been bribed to let messages slip through? Detectives from Westchester County swarmed the prison, interviewing inmates and staff. They combed through visiting logs, phone calls, and mail. And though no direct evidence tied Marino to the murder, everyone inside believed he was behind it. It was his style, clean, ruthless, a message to anyone who thought he was finished just because he wore state-issued blues. The body in the river wasn't just a crime scene. It was a warning. And it set off a chain reaction that would tear through Sing Sing's fragile balance of power. The Bloods' warning. Cell Block D was dominated by the Bloods, their graffiti etched across the concrete like territorial flags. Their leader, a wiry man known as Red Dog, had little patience for outsiders muscling in. Marino's growing influence, combined with the river body, made him a target. One night in March, as Marino headed back to his cell, 3 men cornered him on the tier. Shivs flashed in the dim light. A scuffle broke out, fists, blood, steel scraping against flesh. Guards rushed in, sirens blared, and Marino was dragged out alive but bleeding, a jagged slice across his ribs. Red Dog sent a message loud and clear. Sing Sing wasn't going to be run like the Bronx Street. The prison went into lockdown. Cells slammed shut, lights buzzed on all night, and the tension rose with every passing hour. But Marino wasn't the type to lick his wounds. He was already plotting revenge, and he had allies no one expected. The Secret Alliance. Behind bars, survival made strange bedfellows. Marino reached out to the Nitas, a Puerto Rican prison gang known for discipline and ruthlessness. The Nitas had long clashed with the Bloods over contraband routes inside Sing Sing, from smuggled drugs to black market cigarettes. Marino offered them something they couldn't refuse: mafia connections on the outside that could bring in steady supplies of heroin through visiting families. The alliance was sealed in the yard with a handshake, a moment that looked innocent to guards but would later be remembered as the turning point. By April, stabbings doubled. Homemade shanks were found in laundry baskets, taped under tables in the mess hall, hidden inside library books. Rumors swirled of a war coming, one that would test Sing Sing's fragile hierarchy to the breaking point. The investigator. Detective Michael Caruso of the Westchester County Organized Crime Task Force had been chasing the mafia for years. He knew Marino's reputation, and the body in the river gave him his opening. Caruso was relentless, combing through prison correspondence and flipping low-level soldiers outside. He believed Marino had ordered at least 2 more hits from inside, though proving it was another matter. Caruso's obsession with the case soon put him in danger. Anonymous threats arrived at his office. A dead rat was left on his doorstep. His wife reported being followed home from the grocery store. The lines between the prison walls and the outside world were blurring. Caruso wasn't just investigating Sing Sing anymore. He was being pulled into its shadow. The hidden ledger. The turning point came in late May. A shakedown in cellblock C uncovered a hidden notebook, stuffed into the hollowed-out spine of a Bible. The ledger detailed debts, coded names, and instructions for shipments. Inmate numbers were matched to aliases, and one entry stood out: Knuckles, paid in full. The ledger didn't prove Marino had ordered Joey Knuckles' death, but it was damning enough. Investigators believed they had finally found the link between the body in the Hudson and Marino's cell. But the notebook carried another secret: a list of guards' initials next to dollar amounts. Corruption inside Sing Sing ran deeper than anyone wanted to admit. The betrayal. Summer heat settled over Sing Sing, making tempers short and days unbearable. Then came the betrayal. A member of the Nitas, caught with contraband, cut a deal with investigators. In exchange for protection, he revealed the details of Marino's alliance and claimed Marino had a mole among the guards, someone who smuggled out orders and smuggled in cash. The revelation tore through the prison like wildfire. No one knew who the mole was, but suspicion poisoned the air. Guards no longer trusted each other. Inmates whispered about a dead man walking. And Marino? He denied everything. But his calm smile only deepened the mystery. One sweltering August evening, guards found another body. This time, it wasn't in the river. It was inside Sing Sing itself. Red Dog, the Bloods' leader, was discovered in his cell, strangled with a bedsheet, his lips blue and eyes wide with terror. The cell door showed no signs of forced entry. The cameras had mysteriously gone dark for 20 minutes. And the only clue was a single playing card left on his bunk, the ace of spades. The prison erupted in chaos. Sirens screamed, officers stormed the tiers, and rumors of a full-scale gang war ignited. Detective Caruso arrived that night, staring at Red Dog's lifeless body. He knew this wasn't just prison violence. This was a message. But from who and to whom? The truth was far more twisted than anyone could have imagined. Blood on the tiers. The prison was on fire without flames. Not literally. The stone walls of Sing Sing still stood firm against the Hudson's restless current, but inside, everything was collapsing. Red Dog was dead. The Bloods, furious and humiliated, roared for revenge. The Nitas circled their ranks, tightening their grip on contraband route. The Italian mobsters, under Marino's quiet but deadly command, moved like shadows, untouchable and unafraid. And in the middle of it all, Detective Michael Caruso felt the walls of the investigation closing in. The riot that almost was. 2 days after Red Dog's body was discovered, Sing Sing went into full lockdown. Cells clanged shut, yard time was cancelled, and even meals were served through slots. But keeping men like caged animals was a dangerous gamble. Whispers traveled faster than shouts, carried on scraps of paper, smuggled through food trays, or shouted from tier to tier in coded slang. By the 5th night, tension snapped. It started with a plastic tray hurled at a guard in cell block D. Then came the chorus, banging metal against bars, screams rising in unison, fists pounding concrete. The sound shook the tier like a drumbeat of war. Guards donned riot gear. Pepper spray hissed into the block. A phalanx of officers stormed in, shields first, boots stomping. The riot never became a full-scale massacre, but the message was clear. The inmates were ready to burn the place down. And behind the curtain, everyone whispered the same name, Marino. Detective Caruso's dilemma. Caruso knew what was at stake. If the Bloods retaliated against Marino or the Nitas, the prison could spiral into uncontrollable bloodshed. But his case was hanging by threads, a half-burned ledger, a dead gang leader, and a body in the river. At night, sitting in his Ossining office, he pored over the ledger again and again. The initials beside dollar signs haunted him. Who among the guards had betrayed their oath? Who was the mole carrying Marino's orders outside the walls? Caruso had suspects. Officer Harris, known for living beyond his paycheck. Sergeant Klein, who often looked the other way during shakedowns. Even a rookie, Morales, whose sudden new car had raised eyebrows. But suspicion wasn't evidence. And in Sing Sing, false accusations could cost a man his life. Then came the break Caruso didn't expect. The anonymous tip. Late September, Caruso received a call from an unlisted number. The voice on the other end was low, urgent, and trembling. "You're looking in the wrong place," the caller said. "It's not who you think. Check the infirmary. That's where the messages are moving." Before Caruso could press for details, the line went dead. The infirmary? Caruso had assumed the contraband and messages flowed through cell blocks, visitors, or laundry. But the infirmary made sense. Inmates feigned sickness daily to escape their cells. Guards rotated shifts, paperwork piled up, and patients were shuffled in and out with little oversight. A perfect hub for smuggling. Caruso filed the lead away. But the next day, the infirmary itself became a crime scene. The second murder. Inmate Luis Delgado, a mid-level Nita soldier, was found sprawled on the infirmary floor, throat slashed ear to ear. A sharpened toothbrush handle was still lodged in his chest. Blood pooled beneath his bunk, soaking through sheets and dripping onto the tile. The infirmary nurse swore she'd stepped out for only 3 minutes. When she returned, Delgado was dead, and no one had seen the killer. But Delgado wasn't just another inmate. He was rumored to be Marino's liaison, the man responsible for ferrying coded notes through medical checkup. With him gone, Marino's pipeline seemed severed. Or so it seemed. When guards stripped Delgado's mattress, they found something tucked in the stuffing. Another ledger page, this one written in faint pencil. It listed only 2 names, Marino and Caruso. The detective's blood ran cold. The trap. Caruso knew what it meant. Someone inside Sing Sing was framing him. By planting his name in the ledger, Marino or his allies were flipping the script, turning suspicion on the investigator himself. If word spread, Caruso could lose credibility, his career, even his life. And that's when the threats escalated. His car windshield was smashed outside the Escalating courthouse. A note was left under the wiper: "Last mile is waiting for you." At home, his daughter swore she saw a man watching the house from across the street. His wife begged him to leave the case, to let someone else handle it. But Caruso couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when bodies were piling up inside Sing Sing like sandbags before a flood. Marino's shadow. Inside the prison, Marino was untouchable. He walked the yard with a smirk, playing chess with other mobsters, cracking jokes, never once acknowledging the storm around him. To younger inmates, he was a legend, a man who could order death with a nod and still eat his lunch in peace. Guards muttered that Marino's power stretched into the warden's office itself. Food trays arrived for him hotter than for anyone else. His laundry was always returned first. Rumor had it he even had access to fresh sheets, a luxury in a place where most slept on stained, threadbare rags. But beneath the calm exterior, Marino was calculating. Red Dog's death had tipped the scales in his favor. The Bloods were leaderless, fractured into smaller factions, while the neatest grew stronger under his protection. Every stabbing, every fight, pushed Sing Sing closer to a war only he could win. Still, Marino had one problem: Detective Caruso. The double agent. October brought a twist no one expected. A correctional officer, Sergeant Klein, was arrested in a sting outside the prison. FBI agents caught him meeting with a known Genovese associate, passing along what looked like prison files. In exchange, Klein received an envelope stuffed with cash. The headlines exploded: Sing Sing guard arrested for mafia ties. Inside, the inmates celebrated. Outside, the investigation tightened. Klein, facing decades behind bars, flipped almost immediately. He admitted to carrying notes for Marino, smuggling in cash, even tipping him off about shakedowns. But when pressed about the murders, Joey Knuckles in the river, Red Dog in his cell, Delgado in the infirmary, Klein clammed up. "It wasn't Marino," he said. "Not directly. He doesn't get his hands dirty. But trust me, it's worse than you think." The disappearing evidence. Days later, the incriminating ledger page with Caruso's name vanished from the evidence locker at Westchester County HQ. Security cameras showed nothing. Logs didn't match. It was as if the page had never existed. Caruso knew what it meant. Someone higher up, maybe in law enforcement, maybe in the state corrections system, was working against him. The rot didn't stop at Sing Sing's gates. It reached into the institutions meant to control it. And then came the call that shattered everything. The family threat. Caruso was driving home late one night when his phone buzzed. The voice was calm, deliberate. "You want Marino? Back off. Or your daughter walks the last mile before you do." Click. Caruso gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. This wasn't just about Sing Sing anymore. This was personal. The secret burial ground speculated. In November, during an inmate work detail near the riverbank, a guard stumbled upon something half buried in the mud. Human bones. At first, officials claimed they were old, maybe from Ossinings's 19th century past. But whispers spread that they were connected to Marino's crew. Unconfirmed reports suggested multiple shallow graves lay scattered along the prison's perimeter, hidden under decades of overgrowth. If true, it meant Sing Sing had been more than a prison. It had been a dumping ground. Caruso pushed for excavation, but the order was stalled by higher-ups. Too disruptive, they claimed. Unconfirmed. But to Caruso, the message was clear. somebody powerful didn't want the truth uncovered. The first snow of winter returned in December, coating Sing Sing in silence. But inside, silence was the most dangerous sound of all. One evening, as Caruso left his office, he found an envelope taped to his windshield. No note. No srets. Just a single photograph inside. It was his daughter, walking home from school. And scrawled across the back, in rough block letters, "The last mile is closer than you think." Caruso's chest tightened. This wasn't just about gang wars or mob vendettas anymore. This was a war against him, one he could no longer fight from the outside. To save his family, and himself, he'd have to step inside Sing Sing. Into the belly of the beast. The storm had broken over Ossining. Snow clung to the rooftops, the Hudson was a sheet of black ice, and the town seemed to shrink under the shadow of its prison. Inside Sing Sing, the atmosphere was electric with rage and fear. Red Dog was gone, Delgado was dead, and Marino walked the tiers as if he owned them. Detective Michael Caruso had reached his breaking point. His family was under threat, his credibility shaken, and his investigation compromised at every turn. The photograph of his daughter was still in his pocket, creased from the pressure of his trembling hands. He knew the message: back off or lose everything. But Caruso wasn't built to retreat. And so, against every warning, he did the unthinkable. He stepped inside Sing Sing, not as an investigator on the outside, but as a man willing to walk the tiers himself. The first step inside. The gates clanged behind him with a sound that seemed to echo through the marrow of his bones. He'd been in prisons before, countless times, but never like this. Not as prey. Not with every eye on him, studying, calculating. The air smelled of bleach and sweat, layered over decades of blood and mildew that no cleaning solution could erase. Guards in gray uniforms eyed him with suspicion, some even with contempt. He wasn't welcome here. Not among inmates, and not among staff who feared what his investigation might expose. As he crossed the yard toward the administrative wing, he caught the gaze of an inmate, tattooed teardrops, a scar running from ear to chin. The man smirked, then dragged a finger across his throat. Caruso's pulse quickened. He was no longer the hunter. He was the hunted. The interview with Marino. They brought him to the visiting room, stripped of its usual plexiglass for confidentiality. Marino was already there, seated at the table. He looked nothing like the violent mob soldier described in files. His hair was slicked back, his prison blues crisp and pressed, his hands folded calmly as if waiting for a business meeting. "Detective Caruso," Marino said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I was wondering when you'd come to see me." Caruso didn't respond at first. He studied the man, the way his shoulders never slouched, the way his gaze never wavered. Marino radiated quiet control, the kind that didn't need shouting or fists. "You think you're clever," Caruso finally said. "Bodies in rivers. Playing cards left on bunks. You think this is some kind of game." Marino leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything in here is a game. Survival. Respect. Power. You know the rules, detective. Out there, you've got your badge. In here, I've got my kingdom." Caruso clenched his jaw. "Red Dog. Delgado. You had them killed." Marino tilted his head. "Speculation. Convenient speculation. You ever wonder why evidence keeps disappearing in your case? Why your name ended up in that ledger? Maybe the real story isn't about me. Maybe it's about who's protecting me." The words hung in the air like a blade. Caruso realized then that Marino wasn't just taunting him. He was warning him. The corruption wasn't just inmate deep. It stretched upward into the very system itself. The guard's whisper. After the meeting, as Caruso left the room, a guard brushed past him, slipping something into his pocket without breaking stride. Caruso waited until he was in the restroom to check. It was a folded scrap of paper, hastily torn from a notebook. On it, scrawled in shaky handwriting, Tier E, laundry room. Midnight. Trust no one. Caruso's gut twisted. It could be a trap, but it could also be the break he needed. That night he returned. The laundry room. The laundry room smelled of detergent and mold, massive machines clanking in the shadows. The hum of dryers masked distant footsteps. Caruso's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing piles of linens stacked haphazardly against the wall. Then he heard it, a voice low and urgent. You shouldn't be here. From behind a washer stepped Officer Morales, the rookie guard Caruso had once suspected. His eyes darted around nervously, sweat beading on his brow despite the cold. They're going to kill you, Morales whispered. They already put your name in the ledger. That wasn't just to scare you. That was the start. The order's already gone out. Caruso's heart pounded. Who? Marino. Morales shook his head. Higher. You don't understand. This place, it's rotten from the top down. Warden knows. Maybe even further. Marino's just the face. The real orders come from people you'll never touch. Before Caruso could press for more, the sound of boots echoed down the hallway. Morales panicked, shoving a small notebook into Caruso's hands. Take it. Don't let them. The door slammed open. Flashlights cut through the room. Guards poured in. Morales froze like a deer in headlights. Contraband, one of them barked. You're both under investigation. Caruso's badge saved him from being cuffed, but Morales wasn't so lucky. He was dragged out screaming, They'll kill me! You know they will. And Caruso knew he was right. Morales's death. The next morning, Morales was found hanging in his cell. Officially, it was ruled a suicide. But Caruso didn't believe it for a second. Morales had been silenced. The notebook he'd given Caruso was filled with codes, initials, and strange markings. Some matched entries from the first ledger. Others were new, pointing to payments far larger, far deeper than Caruso had imagined. But one entry chilled him to the bone. Caruso cleared. It wasn't a threat. It was a contract. His murder was already accounted for, the debt settled before the act itself. Escalation in the yard. Meanwhile, Sing Sing's yard was on the brink of war. With Red Dog dead, younger bloods fought among themselves for leadership. Stabbings erupted almost daily. The Nidas tightened control, backed by Marino's quiet approval. Inmates traded blows over scraps of turf, a phone in the corner, a table in the mess hall, a spot in the laundry detail. The guards, stretched thin and corrupt to the core, barely contained the violence. Rumors spread of a day of reckoning, a coordinated attack to wipe out rivals in one brutal strike. Caruso watched from the observation deck, the weight of Morales's notebook heavy in his coat. He wasn't just investigating a mob soldier anymore. He was standing in the middle of a powder keg. The silent meeting. That night, Caruso arranged a meeting with an old contact, Father Callahan, a prison chaplain who'd ministered inside Sing Sing for years. Callahan was one of the few men both inmates and staff respected, a rare neutral figure. Over black coffee in a church basement, Callahan leaned close. You're chasing Marino, he said. But Marino is just a piece. He's dangerous, yes. But this is bigger than one man. The gangs, the mafia, the guards, they're all pieces of the same puzzle. Someone's keeping them balanced, letting the violence fester just enough to control it. Who? Caruso pressed. Callahan shook his head. I don't know. Or maybe I don't want to. But I do know this. If you keep digging, you won't just lose your badge. You'll lose your family. And maybe your life. Caruso's hands shook as he sipped the bitter coffee. He wasn't afraid of dying. But the thought of his daughter walking the last mile, that haunted him. The Yard Massacre. December 15, 1983. The day Sing Sing nearly burned. It started at morning yard call. The Bloods, fractured and desperate, launched a sudden attack on the neatists near the weight benches. Shanks flashed in the winter sun, fists swung, and screams tore through the frosty air. Within minutes, the yard was chaos. Inmates clashed in violent swarms. Guards fired tear gas, the acrid smoke curling against razor wire. Batons cracked skulls, boots crushed ribs. Sirens blared across Ossining. By the time order was restored, 2 inmates lay dead, their bodies carted away under blood-stained sheets. Dozens more were injured. And in the middle of it all, Marino sat on a bench, untouched, calmly smoking a cigarette as if watching a show. That night, Caruso spread Morales's notebook across his desk, comparing it to the first ledger. Slowly, the pieces connected. Payments flowed not just to guards, but to administrators. Some initials matched names in the Department of Corrections. Others hinted at political offices far beyond Ossining. Marino wasn't the king. He was just a knight, moved across the board by hands unseen. As Caruso traced the lines of corruption higher and higher, he froze at one entry. The initials weren't vague this time. They were clear. W. Caruso whispered the name aloud, his voice trembling. The warden. The warden's game. Snow fell heavy on Ossining the night Michael Caruso whispered the initials aloud. W. The warden. He'd chased Marino for months, believing the mob soldier was the spider at the center of the web. But the truth was more insidious. Marino wasn't the mastermind. He was a pawn, powerful, ruthless, but expendable. The real strings were being pulled from the top of Sing Sing itself. And if Caruso was right, the man who'd sworn to uphold order inside the walls was the same man feeding chaos into them. The man behind the desk, Warden William Whitaker, had been running Sing Sing for nearly a decade. To the public, he was a stern, by-the-book administrator who spoke of discipline and rehabilitation at press conferences. He wore sharp suits, shook hands with politicians, and posed for photographs in front of the prison gates like a general before his troop. But to those inside, Whitaker was a ghost. Rarely seen on the tiers, he ruled from behind his office door. Rumors swirled of his wealth, of late-night meetings with shadowy figures, of a mansion north of the city paid for in cash. Nothing proven. Nothing solid. Until now. The ledgers Morales had left pointed to him. Payments funneled through guards, laundered through prison contractors, even siphoned from commissary profits. Every gang war, every smuggling route, every corpse was part of a larger economy, an empire of crime run under the state's nose. And Whitaker was the emperor. The silent confrontation Caruso knew, he couldn't storm the warden's office with accusations. Without proof, he'd be dismissed, maybe even destroyed. But silence was killing him. So one bitter January morning, he walked into Whitaker's office unannounced. The warden was behind his desk, glasses perched low on his nose, reviewing papers. He didn't look surprised. "Detective Caruso," Whitaker said smoothly. "I was wondering when you'd find your way here." Caruso stiffened. "Cut the act, Whitaker. I know about the payments. I know about the guards. I know about Marino. This whole place bleeds because of you." Whitaker's eyes glimmered with amusement. "Be careful, detective. Accusations like that have weight. And sometimes they fall back on the accuser." Caruso slammed the notebook onto the desk. "This is your handwriting in here. Your initials. How long have you been selling out the men and women who trusted you?" Whitaker leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Do you think this prison runs on discipline alone? Order doesn't come from rules. It comes from balance. Gangs keep each other in check. Violence keeps them hungry. Men like Marino keep the wheels greased. And me? I keep it all contained." Without me, this place burns. Caruso's voice cracked with fury. You're not controlling chaos. You're feeding it. You're murdering men to keep your empire alive. Whitaker didn't flinch. He just smiled. And you're still alive because I allow it. The breaking point. 2 days later, chaos erupted. It began with a stabbing in the mess hall, a blood soldier gutting Anita over a tray of food. Retaliation came swift, 3 more stabbings in the shower block. By nightfall, Sing Sing was a battlefield. Guards clashed with inmates, tear gas choking the tears, alarms screaming. Caruso stood in the observation tower, notebook clutched tight, watching the prison descend into war. He knew Whitaker wasn't trying to stop it. Whitaker was orchestrating it. The chaos was cover. In the smoke and blood, anything could disappear, including evidence, including people. And then Caruso heard it, a voice over the radio. Protect Marino. Get him to the infirmary. Warden's orders. Caruso's stomach dropped. The war wasn't just a distraction. It was a culling. The hit on Marino. In the chaos of the riot, Marino was being moved under guard. But someone wanted him silenced. A figure slipped from the shadows of the infirmary corridor, blade glinting in the fluorescent light. Caruso, against every instinct, rushed in. He tackled Marino out of the way just as the blade sliced across his shoulder. Blood sprayed. Guards piled in, tackling the would-be assassin, a blood soldier with wild eyes and a shiv dripping red. Marino, shaken but alive, looked at Caruso with disbelief. You just saved my life, he muttered. Caruso gritted his teeth, blood soaking his shirt. Don't thank me. You're my witness now. And you're going to help me burn Whitaker down. The alliance no one saw coming. It was unthinkable, a detective and a mob soldier working together. But Marino had no choice. Whitaker had betrayed him, using him as a puppet, then signing his death warrant when he became inconvenient. Locked in a back room of the infirmary, Caruso pressed the advantage. You want to live? Testify. Give me names, dates, details. Put Whitaker at the center. We bring him down together. Marino smirked weakly, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Funny. Out there, you wanted me in the chair. In here, I'm your star witness. Caruso leaned close. Out there, you were a killer. In here, you're my only shot. And for the first time, Marino agreed. The final betrayal. But Whitaker wasn't blind. By the next morning, Marino was gone. His cell stood empty, bed stripped, personal belongings vanished. Guards claimed he'd been transferred to another facility. But no transfer logs existed. To Caruso, it was clear. Whitaker had erased him. That night, another envelope appeared on Caruso's windshield. Inside was a single Polaroid, Marino, slumped in a chair, eyes closed, a bullet hole in his forehead. No note. No explanation. Just the image. Caruso's gambit. Caruso knew the walls were closing in. With Marino dead, his case was smoke. The ledgers alone wouldn't be enough. Whitaker had friends in Albany, maybe even higher. So Caruso made a gamble. He leaked the ledger pages to the press. The New York Times published them in a front-page story. Sing Sing corruption, mafia, gangs, and guards in a deadly alliance. The exposé exploded across the state, drawing cameras, politicians, and outrage. Whitaker was forced into the spotlight. Reporters demanded answers. Lawmakers called for hearings. For the first time, his fortress of silence cracked. But Caruso knew it wasn't victory. It was only survival. The haunting ending. Weeks later, Caruso sat in his living room, his daughter safe at his side, the television flickering with news reports of Whitaker's resignation. Investigations were underway. Arrests were rumored. The machine was faltering. But one detail gnawed at him. Marino's body was never recovered. The Polaroid was the only proof of his death, and some whispered it was a staged photo, a trick to throw investigators off. Rumors spread that Marino had been moved, hidden, maybe even freed, still pulling strings from the shadows. And then came the postcard. No return address. Just a picture of the Hudson River, Sing Sing's walls looming in the background. On the back, a single line in neat handwriting: balance must be kept. No signature. No clue. Just a reminder that Sing Sing's secrets were far from buried. Caruso folded the card slowly, tucking it into his jacket. He looked at his daughter, then back at the screen. The warden was gone. The gangs were fractured. But the machine, the prison itself, still stood. And deep inside its stone walls, the game was already starting again.